Okay, we can start Göksun Hocam.
Okay, welcome all everyone, and thank you for being with us. Tonight at ArchiDesign Talks, we have Büke Uras with us. I think most of you are familiar with him, and he was one of our past part-time instructors and a very valuable colleague and researcher. Let me first provide a brief information as an introduction on him, and then we will listen to his presentation on his recent project. So architect and writer Büke Uras studied architecture at La Sapienza University in Rome, and following his studies he lived in New York City working for Daniel Romualdez Architects and SOM. And after moving back to Turkey, he started his own practice and taught at Bahçeşehir University and periodically contributed to various magazines and newspapers. And currently he lives in Paris. Büke Uras has been collecting architectural drawings and documents from Ottoman era and early Turkish Republican period for over 10 years. And in time, his private collection has become one of the most comprehensive of its kind. In 2013, he worked with Istanbul Research Institute for the curation of Edoardo De Nari, the architect of changing times, 1874-1954, where De Nari's impressive lost collection of architectural drawings and personal documents discovered by Uras were brought to light, and he also prepared the exhibition catalogue. In 2016, he collaborated with academic and art historian Professor Baha Tanman on the Şişli Mosque, a book about the first major Republican-era mosque in Istanbul. He researched and published the work of a major painter-decorator of Ottoman palaces, Bedros Sirabyan, in a series of articles. And in 2017, he curated his second exhibition, Nazmi Yaver Yenal, The Imaginary World of a Paper Architect, again writing the exhibition catalogue. And finally, in 2021, he published his most comprehensive publication to date, Balyans, Ottoman Architecture and Balyan Archive. And today we have the chance of learning more about his last project, and we are so pleased to have him here with us again. Before leaving the floor to Büke for his very exciting presentation on the Balyan family, he wants us to participate and interrupt and ask questions whenever we have any. So please do not hesitate to raise questions during the also presentation, and we can try to have an interactive meeting tonight. So Büke, now you have the floor.
Hello everyone. I am very happy, sincerely very happy to be with the Bahçeşehir family once again. As Göksun Akyürek put it, I lectured in Bahçeşehir as a part-time teacher for, I think, 5-6 years. And it's one of the things that I miss most, not being in Turkey, to be part of Bahçeşehir team. So here I am, very happy to be with you once again. So tonight we will talk about my last book and a project that I worked for around 3 years about the Balyan family of architects. As Göksun Hoca said, please do not hesitate to interrupt and let this presentation be an interactive presentation. So let's please don't hesitate to raise questions. I will be very happy to answer them spontaneously. So let me open the presentation. Please let me know if it works. Does it work?
Yes, it works. Yes.
Okay. So the adventure of writing a new book on Balyan family started around 3 years ago, 3 years before the publication. The main reason behind the publication of the book and the start of the research has been the finding or rediscovery of the Balyan family archive. As you know, Balyan family has...
Büke Hocam, I'm sorry for interrupting,
Of course.
but maybe you can also start the presentation mode in PowerPoint.
I think I already did, no?
No, we are seeing the whole file.
Okay. Paylaşım durdur. Now I think it should be fine.
I mean, the presentation mode in PowerPoint, we see the pages.
Okay. And how do I do that? How do I do it?
Down below, when you see the percentages at the right.
Yes.
On
Right,
the left
was-
of that,
Near to the
there's-
minus. Near to the minus. The button.
next to the minus, yes, that
Yes.
one.
That one.
That one?
Okay, here we go.
Yes,
Okay, yes.
Perfect.
thank you.
This is the book. So as you know, just a small information about the family, Balyan family. It's three generations of Armenian Ottoman family who mostly worked and realized significant buildings for the Ottoman sultans in 19th century. So the main motivation behind the new book on Balyan family has been the recent revealing of Balyan family archive. However, the study went beyond this objective, and thanks to various written and visual archive documents reached during the research process, we ended up adding to this archive that already existed. So a little bit information about the archive. We know that Sarkis Balyan, who belongs to the last generation, the third generation of the architect family, who died in 1899, gave the archive to his colleague Leon Güreyan. We do not know the reason why he gave the entire archive to Leon Güreyan, but surely Güreyan left Turkey and he moved to Italy, a small town called Asolo, and for 3 generations they kept the archive, the Balyan archive, in their own family house until the years 2016, when the family, the grandson, Armen Güreyan, who is an architect himself also, decided to donate the Balyan archive to a public institute in Armenia today. Before it was not possible because of the political situation of the Soviet Republic. After, of course, the fall of the Berlin Wall, it was possible to make some donations also to public institutions in the ex-Soviet republics. So today the Balyan archive is kept in Alexander Tamanyan Public Library in Erivan, the capital of Armenia. So why is this archive so important for Ottoman architecture? First of all, Balyans never wrote down texts revealing their architectural thoughts. This is something missing in 19th century architectural history. They are not ideologists. In the absence of such texts, which would have helped us understanding their design philosophy, during all these years, the Balyan architecture was evaluated only in the light of their constructed buildings. This is the case of, for example, Pars Tuğlacı, the case of Afife Batur. They only studied the Balyan architecture through the constructed existing buildings. As a matter of fact, the first Balyan historiography was written by an Istanbul journalist, Viscount Alfred de Caston, who in 1875 made an interview with Sarkis Balyan. And he published this interview, which is the most and the only existing interview by a Balyan family member, in Revue de Constantinople in 1875. So in this interview, he described the methodology to be followed for the Balyan historiography for many years to come. In this interview, he says, "The history of the family can be written with monuments." So this is very important and key sentence. So from this sentence written by Alfred de Caston, really for around 150 years, Balyan architecture was only studied through the existing monuments, existing buildings, built, implemented buildings. So this archive enabled us for the first time to come with a different approach. So this research for the first time makes a comprehensive review of the Balyan family architecture, which includes not only constructed buildings, but also brings a new approach with revealed documents of non-existing buildings. But also there is something very important. I would like to show you some examples. For example, I have some sketches on the drawings. I don't know if I included, I did not include, sorry. But these sketches and also different alternatives of monuments built shows us for the first time, enables us to understand the design process of Ottoman monuments. So for the first time, we have we are able to see the design process from the very start approach until the very finalized design product. For the first time, we can see this process step by step. This is something extremely important, and we're witnessing this for the first time in Ottoman architectural history. I think this is very important. So as I said, Leon Güreyan kept the archive, and thanks to him and thanks to his family, which kept the archive for 3 generations, the Balyan Archive is today in Alexander Tamanyan Public Library in Erivan. So when we study the archive, we have come through many different projects, which was difficult to identify because, as you see, nearly none of the projects have descriptions on them. Some projects are very easy to understand. For example, this was an easy task in the research process. This is, as you can easily understand, is the Vaziyet Planı, the complex of Beylerbeyi Palace building, which is composed of different buildings. But for example, only this image gives us extremely important information about Ottoman palace architecture in 19th century. For example, the lower main building on the river, on the Bosphorus side, is today the museum, as we can visit today as Beylerbeyi Palace Museum. But on the left and right side, we have the pools, and then we have today non-existing buildings. These were buildings demolished at the turn of 20th century. 20th century, yes, around 1900. We don't know the exact date of demolitions. We knew their existence of some archival photos, but for the first time, thanks to this document, we have the plans of the demolished buildings of Beylerbeyi Palace, which is extremely important for Ottoman palace history. Then we can pass to this sketch, which was very difficult to identify what it was. This is actually one of the first proposals of Çırağan Palace. As you can see, there's the water. So the building, the project is sitting on a site on Bosphorus. And we know that the first Çırağan Palace built by Mahmud II was demolished by Abdülmecit, the Sultan Abdülmecit, and the new palace was commissioned to Nikogos Balyan, again the 3rd generation of Balyan family. So this initial project, actually it is interesting to confront these projects with the final Çırağan Palace, which is this. For 15 years, and including 2 sultans, Abdülmecit and Abdülaziz, and spanning different Balyan family members from Nikogos to Sarkis and Agop collaborations, we have around 10 different proposals to the same site. And it's extremely interesting for us to see how the Çırağan project reached to the final product that we can see today. Interesting enough, the first proposals always have something that gives to the final product. For example, we have some, I did not put all the proposals, but we have, for example, some physical features like ornaments that are kept in the final product. But in some examples, the rhythm is kept. In some examples, the staircase is kept. So each proposal gives something to the final product. So it is the first time in Ottoman architectural history that we see the process of how the monuments were structured and how they were brought to light. This is, I think, extremely important. For the first time, thanks to the Balyan Archive, we do not consider the Ottoman architecture only through the implemented, constructed buildings. I think this is the most important thing that we can learn from the Balyan Archive. What we call Balyan Archive actually is the archive, the personal archive of Sarkis Balyan. So I'm not giving too many details. We have only 45 minutes, but Sarkis Balyan is the third generation of Balyan family. So in the Balyan Archive, we do not have anything that belongs to the first two generations, Krikor and Garabet. I would like to show you their photos so we are more familiar. Krikor worked for Mahmud II, and we do not have any images of Krikor because there was no photography then, and he did not have any portrait painted of himself. And this is his son, Garabet. This is an image that I found in an institute, private institute in Paris, published for the first time in the book. Unfortunately, the canvas is lost today, but we have a photo of the lost painting taken by Abdullah brothers. So this is Garabet Balyan, and the portrait of Garabet Balyan is the first portrait ever painted, this one, of an Ottoman architect, contemporary Ottoman architect. I think this is very important because Balyan family is really, Balyan family is definitely pushing the identity of the modern Ottoman architect. The process that triggered the modernity of the Ottoman architect figure, the modern Ottoman architect figure, should be dated back to the dissolution of Hassan Mimarlar Ocağı, which was dissolved in 1833 through bureaucratical reforms of Tanzimat during Mahmud II's reign. So thanks to the dissolution of Hassan Mimarlar Ocağı, which was this institutional group of architects who worked for the government, from that moment on, it was permitted that pre-modern or proto-modern Ottoman architecture figure could also be established. And Balyan figures, Garabet, Krikor, Krikor, I would say a little bit early, but Garabet and his sons are one of the first modern Ottoman architects that could work not only for the government, because they continue to work for the government, but also by themselves as individual or semi-individual, as in today's terms, modern Ottoman architects. So what do we mean about the modernity of Ottoman architect? This is a new figure. First of all, they're visible. Garabet Balyan, this image as you see, is the first Ottoman architect who paints his own portrait. This is a post-mortem portrait. I would like to underline it. It was painted right after his death, and it was commissioned by his sons. But as you see, he's wearing this fez, and he's also wearing this Istanbulin, it's called, this black coat, and he's holding his compass, golden compass, on an architectural drawing. I'm not giving too many details, but you can see this modernity that the Ottoman architectural figure is no more anonymous. The physical features are clearly realistic, and with the later generation, especially with Sarkis Balyan, we will see that the Balyan family members' physical features will be featured often in the Ottoman press. So for the first time, an Ottoman architect will be visible to the Ottoman nation, realistically. Again, another feature of modernity is the use of photography. This is very important. This is a photo that I found in an archive, again, a private archive in Paris. It was dedicated by Nikogos Balyan to his teacher in Paris, Henri Labrouste, saying, hommage respectueux de son élève, respectful homage from his student to Mr. Henri Labrouste, Nikogos Balyan. And this is the Muayede Salonu, the main hall of Dolmabahce Palace, dedicated and sent to his teacher in Paris. Another very important figure is this, an album of photography, again by Abdullah Biraderler, we found in Los Angeles Getty Museum. And this was a photo album of Çırağan Palace, which had just been completed. And Sarkis Balyan and Agop Balyan, who is responsible for the project, commissioned Abdullah Biraderler photo albums of Çırağan Palace. So this is extremely important because for the first time we have an Ottoman architect who uses photography as a commercial means. So what they did is they prepared this very prestigious albums and they sent it to all important European and Asian courts. So one copy went to Tsar of Russia, one copy went to the Empress of England, one copy went to Napoleon III, and so on. This is the only copy that we could find, which is again in Los Angeles today, and it is the copy that was sent, as you can read, to the King of Spain. So this is again the modernity of the Ottoman family, how they used photography as means of publicity, which is a very modern issue today. Another very important thing of modernity is how they use technology in the construction sites. As I said in the book, there's a chapter on this subject, which is called The Silence of the Chantier, Silence of the Construction Sites. Unfortunately, Ottomans never documented the construction sites. What we have as visual images of the construction sites are only images taken, just seen, and some details seen by chance on overall Istanbul panoramas or Bosphorus panoramas. This is a typical example. This is an Istanbul view taken from Beyazıt Tower. And by chance, there is the construction of Ali Pasha Köşkü in Mercan, which was, unfortunately does not exist today. It was burned down. And here, this is the most detailed construction image of a Balyan building. And here you can see a very monumental ramp that I also studied in the book. I'm not giving too many details. The important thing about the constructions of Balyan is they are the first ones, especially Sarkis Balyan, who was an inventor himself, and I could find his inventions in French National Library because he had taken some legal permissions from the French government. So the images and the invention drawings are kept in French archives. So he was very keen on mechanics, and what he did is, for the first time, he introduced a machine à vapeur. How would you say in English? Buharlı makine. How do you say in English? I have no idea. Steam machine, I think. Yeah, steam machine. So Sarkis Balyan is the first one who introduced steam machines into Ottoman construction sites. This is extremely important because it revolutionized entirely the Ottoman construction world. For example, Dolmabahce Palace was built in 13 years, which is a long time. It was a big palace. Beylerbeyi, which is of course smaller, it was finished in less than 2 years. So this huge gap of time difference is thanks to the use of steam machines in construction sites brought from France for the first time by Sarkis Balyan. This is extremely important. Sarkis Balyan is also responsible for the first construction firm in modern sense in the Ottoman world. This is also important. He introduced huge working stations, again with steam machines, for example, for cutting wood, so that all the boiserie, all the wood paneling of the rooms could be manufactured in a very rapid and efficient way in this steam-used atelier. And then he also introduced huge depot. around the Bosphorus, so that by boat they could transport different materials to the continuing different construction sites. He also, thanks to this firm, which was called Société Anonyme Ottomane de Construction, the Ottoman firm of constructions, it was called, they always collaborated by default with the same manufacturers, same artisans, and so on. By this way, we can see, for example, we can see same materials used. For example, this is a mosque interior at perspective, and you can see the green serpentine columns, marble columns that are used in the construction. The same marble columns, thanks to this firm, were used also in the ground floor of Çırağan Palace, which burned down, unfortunately, so we lost all of them. But again, this modernity, also in economical sense of it, is maximizing the profit, minimizing the time, and minimizing the cost. So we're talking about huge monuments, and this was really the most efficient way to realize, to implement all these monuments at the same time. So this is one of the main secrets or main reasons, it's not a secret, it's a reason that sultans for 3 generations gave their projects to Balyan family. Why they preferred, they ask, why did they prefer Balyans for 3 generations, which is a long time? The reason is definitely they could implement in a short time and relatively with lower costs, thanks to this technological inventions. So this is one of the key things of the modernity that I talked about. So now let's see slowly some items, some drawings that are from the project, from the archive. This is, for example, a project that I love. Sarkis Balyan physically takes off the sedef kaplı, sedef, I forgot the name, sedef, some ornamental ivory fil dişi, it's not important, some ornamental doors. They take it off from the existing Çırağan Palace, fortunately, because Çırağan Palace would burn down just a few years later, so the doors would have been lost completely. And they reuse it as a devşirme in the Yıldız Şale Köşkü for the arrival of Kaiser Wilhelm II. This is extremely important. In the book, you will see that there's a releve of the doors, the existing doors, and then there is this decoration project around the existing doors that you can see in this very drawing for the arrival of Kaiser Wilhelm II. So from Abdulaziz to Abdülhamid, here we can see the evolution of the taste also, and we can see this again, this willing to go back to the Islamic roots of the Ottoman Empire. So I'm not talking too much because we have very limited time. I just would like to give some ideas of the contents about the archive. So there are many mentioned projects, and most of them I could identify where they are or for which they were proposed, because many of them are not constructed, as you can see.
May I interrupt?
Please do.
By the way, I hear my echo. Okay. In the book, you mentioned that I think it was Sarkis Balyan who traveled to Spain to also search for some Andalusian Islamic architectural references. Also you talk about, for instance, in this plan, the Palladian influences, the Palladio Villa. So can you also talk about these other cultural references on their architecture? I mean, this Orientalist inclinations.
Of course.
The influences, possible influences of Palladio, for instance.
Of course. It's a very good question, actually, because as I said before, Balyan family spans almost 1 century of architectural projects. So absolutely, we cannot talk of only one reference. So each sultans also play part in the projects, and Balyans also mention it, especially Abdulaziz is very keen on architectural projects. Sarkis Balyan claims that he makes the projects after some drawings of Abdulaziz himself. So we know that the sultans mostly participated in the architectural process as well, which is documented in the interview by Caston. So each sultan and each Balyan family member has different references. So Abdulaziz period is very different. For example, in Abdulaziz period, we see this research for a new Ottoman identity, Ottoman style, Ottoman Osmanlı üslubu, as they call it, Yeni Osmanlı üslubu, the new Ottoman style. This is not an identification said by me. This is really the words of Balyans in the interview in 1875. So there is this research of a new architectural idea, new architectural style during the Abdulaziz period. When we come to Abdülhamid II, as we saw in the example of the Çırağan Palace Sedefli Kapıları, the doors that I showed the image before, there is this interest in going back, ihyacı as we call in Turkish, going back to the Islamic roots. And of course, this shift of styles also is strictly related to the political evolutions. Of course, we cannot, architecture has always been part of politics, or politics has always been part of architecture. We cannot separate them. And of course, especially Balyans who work themselves for the sultans always reflect and influence and inter-influence with the taste of the sultan they're working for. So when you ask your question, since Balyan spans 100 years, really we cannot say one single style or one single methodology. For example, Kirikor still, Hasta Mimarlar Ocağı is still functioning during Kirikor Balyan's period. We are talking about 1820s, 1830s. So there's this presence of institutionalized Ottoman architectural style, and Kirikor Balyan has to be part of it or orients it, but it is an institution. With the dissolution of Hasta Mimarlar Ocağı, they become semi-independent, yarı serbest mimar. So there is this relative independence, but of course they continue to work for the sultans. So it really depends on the project, it really depends on the sultan, and it really depends on the member of the Balyan family, because there are different members of the Balyan family, and each one is different character-wise also. For example, Garabet Balyan is extremely religious. We know he's extremely religious, and his approach, for example, to Ottoman Armenian issues is based on the Armenian church. When we come to Nikogas Balyan, for example, it's his son, extremely the opposite. His son lives in Paris, and he also witnesses the revolution of 1848, for example. So he's very liberal. So what he comes when it comes to architectural drawings, he has no reference to the church, for example. So it's extremely different than his own father, Garabet Balyan. So each member is different. Each member's reference is different. Palladian, of course, has always been present. Paris is always an extremely important reference. But Egypt, as I mentioned a lot in the book, is very important. Egypt is important for stylistically and also technologically, because, as you know, until the 20th century, Egypt has been an autonomous, semi-autonomous region of Ottoman Empire. So it made part of Ottoman Empire. But the modernity, the technological advancements did not start in Ottoman Empire from the capital Istanbul, but it started in Suez Channel's construction in Egypt, because it was done by the French, and it's a long story short, the steam, with this use of steam power for the first time, that with the machines that were sent from Marseille port to Suez, they were used steam machines were used for the first time in Egypt and not in Istanbul, the capital. It's very important. So Abdulaziz himself goes to Egypt to witness himself as a sultan of the Ottoman Empire on site these new technologies. Sarkis Balyan is the one who brings to Istanbul these new technologies from Paris, but the first example is definitely Egypt and the construction of Suez Channel. This is again back to the archive. This is a very important project. Always I thought this was a church built by the Balyans, so I never understood what these rectangles were for. Then I understood, and this is Ayerini, so it's not a building by Balyans, but as you know, it is a 6th century Byzantine church in the first courtyard of Topkapı Palace. And these rectangles are the exhibition stools for the army collection of the Sultan. So this drawing dated probably 1877. I found some images in the Metropolitan Museum of New York that corresponds perfectly to the plan. And this is the earliest dated museum plan drawing from the Ottoman Empire. So it's a very important plan for Ottoman museum history. Then we come to the most important discovery, I would say, of the research of this book, which is the project of Azizia Mosque. So Azizia Mosque, as you can see, is a mosque that was started just behind the Dolmabahce Palace, as you can see in this detailed photo. So as we all know where Swiss Hotel is today. So in the site of Swiss Hotel, Abdulaziz started a monumental mosque. We knew that they had constructed for 2 years, and the walls existed. The walls were constructed for 2 meters high, so it was pretty tall actually. But then Abdulaziz was dethroned, and then he dies. And Abdülhamid II, who comes after Abdulaziz, prefers not to continue the construction of the mosque. Also, there's a huge defeat, as you know, in the Rus Harbi, 93 Harbi, in 1877. Ottoman Empire loses against Russia, and it's a big defeat, and the economy is not good. So there's no sense to continue such a monumental mosque project. So the mosque is abandoned, the construction is abandoned, but as you can see in the photo, the stones are there already existing, built by Sarkis and Agop Balyan. So the stones are scattered around the area. So from that moment on, the area is called Lapierre or Taşlık in Turkey. Still the name Taşlık comes from the pierre, the very stones of the mosque abandoned of Abdulaziz, which was called Azizia Mosque. You can see the istinat duvarı in the photo, which is the retaining wall. It existed until 1980s, this really monumental retaining wall of probably 20 meters to 10 meters. It's varied in dimensions, but we know that in the highest point it was 20 meters. And Sedat Hakkı Eldem would build Taşlık Gazinosu on this very wall. So the payandalar, the reclining supports of Taşlık Gazinosu were actually sitting on this very retaining wall of Sarkis and Agop Balyan's Azizia Mosque. So I think this was one of the most precious hybrid reunions of 20th century Ottoman architecture or Turkish architecture or Istanbul architecture, which the whole traces were completely demolished, unfortunately, in 1980s to build Swiss Hotel. So the Mosque Azizia, as they call in the period press, or Azizia Mosque, today we have one facade drawing only, which is kept in Balyan Archive. And this is the drawing that looks to the Bosphorus. We are on the European side, so the mihrab looks towards Bosphorus. And in the press, they say that if it were completed, it would have been the biggest mosque of Istanbul, even bigger than Süleymaniye. So we're not talking about an ordinary mosque, but it would have been really the biggest mosque of Istanbul. And another important feature of the mosque that it would have had 4 minarets. So after Sultanahmet Mosque, which has 6, and Süleymaniye, which has 4, after nearly 250 years, Ottoman Empire wanted to build a mosque with 4 minarets. This is extremely symbolic, of course, because Sultan Abdulaziz wanted to show that Ottoman Empire is as powerful as it used to be in the golden age of Süleyman. So there are 2 sections in the drawing, and this is the plan. The plan is extremely important because, as you know, this is Bosphorus. I'll show you Bosphorus. Pardon. So there's this emptiness. So after that, there's Bosphorus. So probably between the mosque itself and the slope of Bosphorus towards Dolmabahce Palace roof, I believe there would have been the türbe of the tomb of Abdulaziz himself, which, of course, the mosque was never finished, so he was buried himself, if I'm not wrong, in II. Mahmut türbesi in Çemberlitaş. The important thing about the mosque is, for the first time, again, after 300 years, we see the use of fil ayakları. Fil ayakları are these 4 monumental feet, structural feet, that holds the dome of the mosque. In Tanzimat architecture in 19th century, like Ortaköy Mosque, Dolmabahce Mosque, Cihangir Mosque, and so on, the dome itself always sits on the exterior walls. So the exterior walls with arches are structural. The arches of the exterior walls are structural. Here, it goes back to the classical structural scheme of 4 monumental feet, which are called elephant feet, fil ayakları, that holds the structure. So again, like as we saw in the 4 minarets, we here see the ihyacı tutum, the behavior that evokes the classical period of Ottoman architecture. But at the same time, it keeps some Tanzimat issues of Ottoman mosque, which is typical courtyard, open courtyard with no ablution fountain in the middle. So as you know, the classical mosques have a closed square courtyard with the ablution fountain in the middle. But as we see in the Ortaköy Mosque or Dolmabahce Mosque, the Tanzimat period mosques have open courtyards with no ablution fountain in the middle. So there is this evoking ihyacı behavior that evokes certain elements of classical period, but keeps also certain elements of Tanzimat period. So it's a very hybrid approach. And this approach was a research itself, which in the press was called, as you can see here, Le Grand Mouvement Architectural, the big architectural movement. So it was already identified itself in the contemporary press as a research of an architectural research. This is extremely important. So we're not commenting on a building from 21st century, but the contemporary press regarded these projects as a very new approach to the Ottoman architecture. This is very important. Also, the methodology, going back to your question, the methodology changed. For example, Ottoman architects never went and took releve in the ancient sites. This, as far as we know, this does not exist. It's a very Western approach to go to an architect, to go to ancient sites, measure and copy them. So the Ottomans never went to Parthenon or to Asia Minor ancient cities to measure them and copy them. This, as we know, as a methodology did not exist. But Sarkis and Agop Balyan, again, as modern architects, they sent a research group to Spain, to Andalusia, to measure and to recopy some elements in Mosque Azizia Mosque. So again, this methodology is very new, very modern to the Ottoman architectural world. And how did I find?
Maybe
yes.
I can interrupt here to
Please do.
maybe
Please do.
give you the chance to rest it.
Okay.
And maybe we can ask to the audience if they have any questions, because
can I just say one thing? How it was possible, the final thing, how it was possible to identify the mosque, because I think the discovery of the mosque is pretty important for Ottoman architectural history, because, as I said, this is not an ordinary mosque. If it had been completed, it would have been the biggest mosque of Istanbul, the capital. So how was it possible? This drawing that you see is today kept in Paris in an institute, a private institute, Nubar Institute in Paris. But the drawings, as I said, are in Erivan, and they make part of the Balyan Archive. So when I put the image of the plan next to the image of the perspective that is kept in Paris in Nubar Institute, it was a perfect match. And from that moment on, I understood, thanks to the marbles that I said, I knew that it was made by Sarkis Balyan, and this drawing is signed. It is signed Sarkis Balyan. So we knew we knew for sure that it is by Sarkis Balyan. And this plan, as you see, with 4 minarets, definitely and perfectly corresponds to the perspective. So we knew by heart that this is definitely 100% Mosque Azizia, which was a lost project and the final monumental mosque project of Ottoman Empire. Again, here the most important thing that we can derive from the Balyan Archive is how Sarkis and Agop Balyan made possible the final project. So here I put, we don't have too much time, I put only a few images, but Mosque Azizia, the Azizia Mosque, has around 50 drawings in the Balyan Archive. So from the very beginning of conceptual project, as we do today, our students do today, the conceptual idea projects, to the very final project, the presentation to the Sultan. So for the first time in Ottoman architectural history, we see the entire process from the conceptual drawings all the way, step by step, to the final product. So this is extremely important, and this is the first time possible for us to see, thanks to the Balyan Archive. And this is all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, dear audience, I mean, is that all? Can we?
I think this is all.
Okay, ask for questions. Okay, maybe I can ask to the audience first if there is any question related with this Azizia Mosque or the other projects, other information you have provided. And maybe while waiting, I can ask my question about Azizia Mosque. Actually, I think it's a very important discovery because I cannot give names for the authors, but in 19th century Ottoman architectural historiography, it is said that the emphasis of the imperial architecture is no more on mosques because the scales are getting smaller, and the emphasis is more on the palaces and more civic architecture in a way.
So which is not true.
Yeah, so this discovery I think changed the overall historiography. So
yes, definitely.
I mean, now we have a grand mosque, in Çamlıca.
Exactly.
So there was an earlier grand mosque to be
exactly.
built in.
I made some calculations in the book. As you can see, the drawings do not have any scale nor description, but especially thanks to the plan that you see here, I took some wall thicknesses as references. So you can see them in the book. I took 2 alternative wall differences. One is 90 centimeters and the other one is 1 meter 10 centimeters. If it is 90 centimeters, the dome I calculated simply with AutoCAD, very simple calculations. Even if we consider the wall in the plan as 90 centimeter thickness, the dome is bigger than Hagia Sophia. If it is 110 really, which is not very unusual for the size of such a monumental mosque, it is by far larger and higher than Süleymaniye Mosque. So really, as the press said as you can see here, for example, even the press celebrates the mosque as the biggest mosque of Istanbul. which makes us the bigger than Süleymaniye itself, which is very important.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a show-off project, obviously, and a new part of the city, the northern part, not the historical peninsula, not old Istanbul.
Definitely.
And actually, in that perspective, I saw two mihrabs or mihrab-like features. Have you noticed that? That was interesting.
This one, right?
I don't see it on the screen, but in the last perspective you shared with this maybe more Maghrib style, I saw two mihrabs, one facing us across and the other on the right. So that was interesting.
Yes. Another interesting thing, as I said, there are different approaches, there are different proposals of the same mosque. And one of the proposals is a cross-plan mosque, which I think is very interesting. Like, even for the period, a cross-plan mosque is nearly impossible for a Muslim building. But so I really hesitated. I thought it was a church, but it is not. It's clearly, you can see the four minarets, and clearly it is cross-plan. So they really tried different proposals, which I found very precious, honestly, to see this process of different proposals.
Yes,
also,
we
you
have
can
another
see again, pardon, you can also see the sütun başlıkları, the details of the columns that are very similar to the Çırağan Palace, which is not surprising because, as I said, again, as a modern notion, Sarkis Balyan used this society, this firm of construction, that he always collaborated with the same contractors, the same artisans, and so on. So it is not surprising to see not only the same material, same marble, but also the same details in different monuments.
Okay, there is a question from Semra Horus.
D'accord.
Hi Göksun.
Hello.
Hi Semra. Semra is also architectural historian. She studies 19th century, and she's also our part-time instructor.
Yeah, this was of course, like a fascinating project that I and a lot of my friends actually have been following, and I am now in the process of still waiting the book. So I'm really curious about all the details. I have two questions actually. I will try to frame them very shortly. One is about the content. I'm curious whether you can check any Ottoman sources, especially for instance, maybe illustrated journals, Ottoman journals, if they mention or talk about any of these projects, because I know that you dig into the French archive, and this interview is also very exciting for me. That's one. And the second is more about the archive and your personal project, actually. Are you planning to make maybe this book and all this great archive in an exhibition to make it accessible for us maybe to see this process? Because I'm really excited to hear that like there is more than even like 50 drawings about a single project, right? So we are used to generally to see the final project, the decided and the determined version, but to be able to grasp the process of this decision, changing the ideas, revisions will be extremely important, I think. So are there any projects, or if it will be possible, even maybe in Yerevan, in like outside of Turkey, like an exhibition could make us, I don't know now, but maybe later, make us go and see?
Of course. So back to your first question, we did look at many different archives. So it's not only French archive, French press. French press was very important. So first of all, French press, that's number one. Second, of course, the Başbakanlık Osmanlı Arşivleri, which is extremely important. We cannot even write a sentence without it. So it's really the proof, the check proof of every single step made by the Balyans, which is the Başbakanlık Osmanlı Arşivi, is extremely important. Then Nubar Kütüphanesi, Nubar Archive, private archive in Paris, which was extremely important for us. So the two perspectives which helped me identify the Azizia Mosque are today kept in Nubar Kütüphanesi. Then Ottoman Armenian press was very important, extremely important. And I don't speak, unfortunately, Armenian. I don't read and I don't write. So I was very grateful that I was helped by two wonderful project coordinators, Kevork Özkaragöz and Arsen Yarman, who from the very beginning until the very end believed in me. And they really digged into every single Armenian written text in 19th century, in churches, church archives, in Vienna archives, in Istanbul archives, in Paris archives. So I have to say I was very helped for the translations in Ottoman and in Armenian. So first of all, it's very important that as architectural historians, we of course say our own comments from our day, but we have to understand how Balyans were seen in their period by their contemporaries. And this is not always easy to understand because they were different approaches, even in their time. By the French, they were always respected as the architects of palaces. Sometimes they don't give their names. For example, I read most of the traveler texts, and they always tell, for example, Théophile Gautier is shown the Dolmabahce Palace construction with Monsieur Balyan. He doesn't say which Balyan it is, but he says this young gentleman called Monsieur Balyan who speaks perfectly fluently French. I believe it is Nikogos Balyan because Garabet did not speak French and Garabet was old at that time and Sarkis was living in Paris, so it was Nikogos. If we go to Ottoman press, the names are missing mostly, but we follow what Balyans did, not through the press, but through the Başbakanlık Osmanlı Arşivleri, because for every architectural work they did, they were granted some gifts. For example, it's very typical that they were given murassa and fiye kutuları, like small jewel boxes. So we know that if it were granted, or a nishan, for example, imtiyaz nishanı or another nishan was granted, we know that the nishan was given. So we know that by the date, we know that they were the architect in chief. So in Ottoman archives are not as direct as the French ones. French ones are very clear. Like I saw Balyan, he's the architect, he did this. Very clear. In the Ottoman world, we have to dig into it. But it's very important to take all information from Ottoman Armenian, which is very, very important, Ottoman documents, Ottoman official documents, and French press. So these are the three most important things that I digged into. Your second question, I would love to make an exhibition, but it seems very unlikely because unfortunately today, for obvious political reasons, the archive is not very open. I personally worked on the archive for 3 years. I've never seen the archive myself. I was given the PDF images, thanks to the wonderful relationship of Kevork Özkaragöz with the Diaspora Ministry of Armenia. Hopefully this book and this research will be a tool for better days, to remembering the past good days. Will I hope it will be a tool, and why not? An exhibition would be wonderful. My dream is to make the exhibition, of course, in Istanbul, because they are Istanbul people. Balyans are from Istanbul, then they are proudly Istanbul citizens. But they testimonied in their will. Leon Güreyan wanted the archive to be in Erivan, so this was written as a fact in the will of Leon Güreyan. So definitely an exhibition should be in Erivan, and definitely an exhibition should be in Paris. So I see this dream exhibition in 3 main centers, and it will be such a nice thing to again use this archive as a tool to have a communication in this very important 3 centers. And why not? Let's do it through the Balyans. Ben teşekkür ederim.
Semra, you are muted.
I thought I unmuted myself. I was saying that fingers crossed then. It will be like much appreciated project for us. Yeah,
definitely, definitely. And I would like to say something, which I think is very important, because in the book we don't have too much time. I don't want to enter in details, but it was never a taboo. But many official press or official language of Istanbul, even touristic brochures, denied the fact that these buildings, important buildings, Dolmabahce Palace, were built, actually designed by Balyans. They always tended to say, they're only contractors, müteahhit, and not the designer of the buildings. No, they are the designer of the buildings, actually. Today we know by heart that they are the designer of the building. So, but things change. Afife Batur and Parstology really opened the path. And thanks to the academic research in the last 20 years, I think we have come a long way and got rid of this prejudice, I would say, especially in the academic world, that no longer is questioned, I think. And I think this is very positive. And I would like to give you a wonderful good news. The book is going to be to the 3rd edition. And this is an extraordinary edition because it is financed by the mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem İmamoğlu. So Ekrem İmamoğlu decided that the book will be the diplomatic gift sent by the mayor of Istanbul internationally to all international mayors of the world. So it is wonderful for me to see how far we could come from 1980s to today, that such an official title like the mayor of Istanbul can embrace the Balyans and use it in the promotion of the city of Istanbul. This is something I think to be proud of. After all this academical research done in the last 20 years, I'm really proud that we have come to this point.
Yeah, I think it is very, very important, and thank you for that. And there is this also mausoleum of Balyans that was opened recently. I think that's also important. And I would like to also ask to the audience again for other questions. By the way, maybe I can also mention the price of the book. We talked about it.
Let's not mention it.
Okay, I mean, the book is very expensive. It's big and it's expensive, but I mentioned that to Büke that I wish it was cheaper and more accessible for all the researchers, and you can continue maybe.
Yes, unfortunately, the price I had nothing to do. I wish it were cheaper. I agree with you. It could have been different, but it is what it is. These are things that I cannot control. I could not control. But again, it's in the 3rd edition, and we make sure that it reaches as many public libraries and university libraries as possible. So it is as reachable as possible. This is very important. And again, I would like to thank the project coordinators here, Arsen Yerman and Köverko Eskoragos, and definitely the editor of the book, which we made an incredible job, Müge Cengizkan of Ankara. So thanks to the wonderful team, once again, that made this book possible.
Okay, there's another hand I see from Nilay Hoca. Yes, Nilay Hocam.
Thank you, Göksun Hocam, and congratulations, Büke Hocam, for this wonderful research and very, fascinating and stimulating presentation.
Thank you.
I am not an historian, but I mean, this Taşlık area, its story really, fascinated me. Because you mentioned about the huge stone retaining wall, and the area is known as Taşlık, and until this discovery, in fact, no one knew that it was the remnants of this Azizia mosque. And also Sedat Hakkı Eldem built over it the very famous Taşlık Kahvesi or Taşlık Gazino, which we all know from the history classes. I just wonder, I mean, Sedat Hakkı Eldem is a name who writes, And I am sure that, you know, it's in a very important area. Were there any assumptions, rumors?
Absolutely nothing. But for example, if you look at Architect magazine's publishing of Taşlık Gazinosu, contemporary, which is 1950s, I think, I don't know the exact date, apologize me. You can clearly see the retaining wall, and there's absolutely no mention whatsoever to Balyans or Azizia Mosque, but you can see that it's an existing monumental, we're talking about a 20-meter high wall. So it's very similar to the one in Topkapı Palace, for example. When you go Beşiktaş-Kadıköy boat, you can see the retaining wall. Or Selimiye Mosque in Haliç. These are typical examples that, you know, kind of the same monumental scale. Another discovery, for example, if you go back to the photo that I shared with you before, the black and white image of the construction site, the real image, it was cut image, but the real image shows also the akaretler, sıra evleri, akaretler row houses. As you know, akaretler row houses has two arms. So the left arm makes a curve, as we all know. We're very familiar with it since we're in Beşiktaş. So finally, I understood why this curve is in that shape and why is that curve is interrupting in that very point. It's exactly going towards Azizia Mosque entrance, and it stops exactly when it reaches the plane where the mosque would have stood. So now I understand why akaretler makes this curve, because it would have been the Cuma Selamlı procession güzergahı route. So the Sultan on horse would go up that row house route güzergah to reach Cuma Selamlı için Azizia Mosque's entrance. So again, we're on the European side, so the mihrab is towards the Dolmabahçe Palace, and the main entrance, the open courtyard that we saw, U-shaped, is towards Maçka. So that U-shaped avlu courtyard is exactly where the akaretler row houses was supposed to reach. So finally, everything makes sense.
It's like a puzzle.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at the audience for other questions, and maybe while waiting, I can also. Okay, there's another question. Vian Tos. Yes. I'm sorry for misspelling.
Hello, professors. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
I have two questions. The first one is why they especially took this inspiration features from the Andalusian architecture.
Yes.
Because geographically they are far and I don't see the link. And my second question, you said that the Balyans were the first to make conceptual ideas in such a way. So how before was the conceptualization of the architecture?
Okay, so the first question is very simple. As you know, the Ottoman Sultans were also the Khalife, the Caliph of the Islamic world. So they have two titles. And being Caliph is extremely important. And so they identify themselves as the Sultans of the Ottoman Empire and the Caliph of the entire Islamic world, which includes definitely the Egypt, which is a very important country of the Islamic world historically. That explains how Azizia Mosque, for example, has nearly nothing to do with Ottoman historical architecture, but has much more references to Memluk architecture. There are some references that I gave in the book. I'm not giving too many details in this short presentation, but there are very clear similarities to 16th century Memluk architecture, much more than the monumental architecture of Istanbul, for example. Let's not forget that Egypt is still part of Ottoman Empire, semi-autonomous part of the Ottoman Empire at that period, and also as Caliph of the Islamic world with the title, the Sultan, of course, has this affinity to this glorious past of Islamic world in Spain. So let's not be surprised that the Ottoman Sultan embraces the Spanish Muslim experience as the Caliph of the Islamic world and uses it as architectural references of the new structures in Istanbul. So this is the first question. Second question, definitely the references are limitless. There's no architectural project without different references, but what I meant, I think, is misunderstood. I'm not saying this is the first time that they're using references and sketches, and this is the first time we see it as images, because the others are lost, simply lost. So what I meant is not that this is the first time that they're using this process, but I'm saying this is the first time we can witness it, we can see it as process of fiziki pieces of drawings, because the others are simply lost. So that's what I meant. I don't know if I'm clear or not.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Am I clear? I'm not sure if I'm clear.
I guess so. Yes, any other questions? Belinda has a question.
Yes.
Not a question. In fact, I have a comment. First of all, I need to say that I am very happy to listen to your presentation. And it was like a kind of architectural dig with all this cross-checking. And I was also a kind of a witness all this, how much effort you have put in this book, and how you have realized how much research and work have been put in the book. So I just want to thank you for that one, and it was really very exciting to listen to the presentation as well. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you very much, Büke.
Thank you, Belinda.
Okay, I see no other questions. So maybe there may be some more questions, but while waiting, I can mention the things that also I would like to highlight.
Of course.
Maybe pose as a question also. Is it exaggeration, but can we say, for instance, I don't know if it's Sarkis Balyan, but the relationship of Sultan Abdülaziz and Sarkis Balyan could be the same with Kanuni and Mimar Sinan, because I think he built many imperial projects, and this mosque project was also a very big one. So of course the time periods are different, but I think Abdülaziz was very much interested in architecture, and they had a very close connection. So maybe that's a similar, that's a parallel.
I think it's a wonderful comparison. Definitely, yes.
Yeah, but apparently the visibility of this relationship and their products is different. And I wonder, do they receive any projects from outside of Istanbul, the Balyan family?
Yes, İzmit, for example, İzmit Hünkâr Kasrı is by the Balyan family.
But again, from the imperial family.
Yes, yes. There are some mosques, for example, Konya Azizia Camii, which is not proved that by document that it is by Balyan family. I personally believe that it is by Balyan family, but we have definitely no documents. So this is for the future researchers to dig into. But if we are to search for a monument built outside of Istanbul, I think Konya Azizia Camii is a good start to understand, even if it's not their project, to understand how Istanbul, the capital, established the taste for the provinces as well. So maybe there was not a direct commission, but an indirect müdahale on the taste, on the construction, on the mosque, I would say. And it's
as a trendsetter, maybe.
Definitely, definitely. For example, I made this research just by chance. I found it out. There's this important synagogue in Jerusalem, which was demolished, it was reconstructed, and so on. It follows perfectly the Tanzimat style Istanbul mosque architecture. So we have this 4 exterior walls with arches, visible arches, as if it's Ortaköy Mosque, or Dolmabahçe Mosque, exactly the same structural type. Liturgical needs, of course, are different because this is not a mosque. So the orientation is different. The mahrim, of course, is different. But the overall envelope is definitely had definitely reference to Istanbul, which is the capital, which is not it should not be surprising that Istanbul was a tastemaker. So a synagogue, a monumental synagogue in Jerusalem, really looked not into New York or Paris, but looked into Istanbul, which was very normal. It was the same empire. It was the province of the same empire. So there's nothing more normal than to look at the capital itself. So I think now with these new inputs, we should also look at the provinces. When I say provinces, it's not only Anatolia, of course. It's from Egypt to North Africa to Balkans and to today 30 countries. And it will be wonderful to see the traces of Istanbul taste in different provinces of Ottoman Empire until First World War.
Yes, definitely. And okay, there's another question from Berat Uğur.
Hello, Hocam. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
The thing I'm wondering is about the Balyan buildings is about my observation. Whenever I went a palace, one of their palaces, I seen they have a really monumental facades on the front side, but they don't have the other side of the building is just like a basic bureaucratic building. Is it an architectural approach or?
It's a financial approach, I would say. I mean, they would have loved to make four sides as beautiful as the front side, but let's never forget that the main road for Istanbul transport, especially for the dynasty, imperial dynasty, is the Bosphorus, like in Venice. So the roads are infamously badly kept. There's a chapter on this in the book as well. So the main approach is always from the sea, exactly like in Venice. So for very clear financial reasons, if they can do only one facade, it's always the Bosphorus facade. The other buildings, unlike today, the other facades are less important than the Bosphorus because the main gate was always from the water. And not never, but it was mostly from the water. For example, Dolmabahce has two gates, as you know, two main gates. So it depends on the building, depends on the site, topography of the site also, and the needs of the building. But the answer is financial, of course.
Thank you, Hocam.
Okay, I'm checking the hands. No new questions. And actually, I'm also curious, why do you think they didn't build any other type of public buildings, like schools, for instance? Fossati built the first university, Darül Fünun. William Smith built the military barrack, which is now used as Taşkışla, the university. Actually, it was built as a hospital. So are there any other public buildings
of course.
Other than mosques or churches?
Definitely, big yes. For example, maybe the most important high school of Ottoman Empire, which was set as an architectural example to the following schools, which is Galatasaray Lisesi, which was very important of the period. It is by Sarkis Balyan. Today we know, thanks to the Balyan Archive, and we have the project in the Balyan Archive, so we now know for sure that Galatasaray Lisesi, the final project, is by Balyan family.
Yeah.
Then we have other very important kamusal buildings. For example, the first museum is Ayerin, as you know. Ayerin is an existing building, but I shared with you that plan, which is very precious because it shows us this new typology, which is a museum. It's a very new idea of a building type. Of course, it's the reuse of an existing building, an unused church, but we see how Balyans transformed the space for exhibition. Again, another very important thing is in the book, you can see I did not show you all the examples, is Babali building. he has all the set of Sublime Port, Babali, design process, which was never constructed. But it is the only example in the drawing which, with extreme details, room by room, gives all the functions of each space on the plan, which is very important because, as you know, from Abdülhamit II, the power of Sublime Port was suppressed. So this is the final act, final time, right before the ikinci meşrutiyet, right before the transformation of first meşrutiyet dönemi, yani 1800, right before 1880s, before Abdülhamit II surpassed completely the power of Sublime Port, we see the structure, the functional structure of how Sublime Port worked. This is very important. For example, the rooms, you can see the mektup dairesi, oradan tercüme dairesi. You can actually follow how the document moved from one ambience to another. It's extremely important. So we don't make architectural history only by facade anymore, but with the plans. And we're not only talking about architecture here, we're talking about bureaucracy, we're talking about politics, we're talking about economy, war, and so on, which are very important and inevitable parts of architectural world.
So it is equivalent to the prime ministry, maybe the Sublime Port.
Definitely.
Okay. Yes, it's, I think, a very important document. So we can have many questions, I think, but in order to maybe end the meeting, or before we end, we can ask as a last question. So what is your next project? I think you are working on a new topic right now.
Yes, I started working on a new topic before Balyan was published. So the new book will be on Büyükada, which is very precious to me because I grew up in Büyükada, as Belinda shared my interest. So I am a Büyükada lover, and I'm very happy that the next book will be on Büyükada. It will again be based on a private archive of images and documents, lots of surprises. So I'm working on that right now.
Okay, so we are waiting.
Me too.
I am
waiting as well.
excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Büke, and also for being so generous with what you collect and what you know, being so generous to share it with the public
It's a
in
pleasure.
general.
And again, I'm very happy to be with the Bahçeşehir family. To me, it is a family. And after so many years, I'm so happy to be still in touch and to see you in great form, exactly as we were 5-6 years ago. And cannot wait to see you face to face very soon.
Yeah, we will be very happy to have you also in our university anytime. So I think we are finishing today's meeting. Maybe Mine Hoca has some last words. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Göksun Hocam. Büke Uras, thank you for this fascinating presentation. It's been great having you here with us. We have a little tradition here in ArchiDesign Talks. As Bahçeşehir University, Faculty of Architecture and Design, we donate in our guest's name. So a donation has been made in your name to SAY Foundation, helping underprivileged children for equality in education. So thank you so much for all your time and effort.
You could not make me happier. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then goodbye, everybody. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
very
Bye-bye.
much.